So some of the cold cases that just came out in the last, not even day, but the last 12, 16 hours. Here's one. This was a jurors closed cold case. Convict former sailor in fatal stabbing of a Point Loma petty officer. Yes. I think it was more than 3 decades ago. Yeah. So I did want, this was out of the Times of San Diego, but there's so many of them. And so it's not just DNA. So this is where it's like, why every day now the stars are just aligning and these are all being solved because it's not just DNA. Here's where it's like, okay, you know God's at work, okay? Because people that are in jail for murder are all of a sudden, like 2 today, I think this may have been one of them, but I could be wrong, but 2 of them today, convicts that were already serving time in jail for murder, who hadn't said anything all these years, came out and admitted to, and were confirmed to be, where they had done the killing. Like that's just, so that has nothing to do with DNA. That's just, they're coming, to that truthful moment and just saying, yeah, I did it. That happened with one yesterday too. So it's not just DNA, it's also the sheriffs and the local police. They're also working with researchers at universities, which that's okay. I mean, like I rip on the universities, but as long as there's enough other agencies that are keeping everybody accountable, then, because the universities have got, as I've said, they have way too much power and they decide way too many things in this country. But I support that because it's the sheriffs, it's the local police, like in Florida. Here, I'll show you. So Tampa, Florida, University of South Florida researchers, along with law enforcement and the Florida's sheriffs, together are working together to crack states' cold cases. So it's going on all over the country. And so, as I said, if you check every day, you'll be like, what is going on? Because it's not just the DNA either. So that's what is just kind of a miracle, in my opinion, because we haven't heard about cold cases for decades now. I mean, maybe one here and there, and that's it. But I think most of them had just been forgotten about. And yet there was a time, like 30 years ago, that they were solved right away because they had enough officers that could be on the street and all the functions that are needed to solve those crimes. But when you have the disgusting politicians that we've had for so long get not just into the major cities and destroy our cities with BLM and all of their their racism, but you get people like Ilhan Omar and those ones, AOC, the ones that are standing with terrorists, screaming for defunding the police, then that's how, and yeah, they've only been there a short time, but prior to them, Barack was in office for 8 years, okay? He brought in BLM. So the police have been being demoralized little by little over many years. And then they defunded them basically right after 2020. I would say that the summer of 2020 was the biggest slap in every police officer's face. Because none of the media they were saying these were peaceful protests with cars on fire, people getting hurt. Just having police being attacked, all because the media and the politicians like Ilhan Omar, AOC, all of those women there in Washington that should be in jail, because long before they caused their insurrection in the Capitol yesterday, they were calling for defunding the police. They were calling for making things unsafe. So, this is an interesting one out of Menominee Falls. So they dug up a body because they linked it, and they're going to do a news conference, and I'm assuming because every news conference they do, and they do them every day, on all of them, they pretty much do a news conference, the local police do. It probably just doesn't make it on the national news, but they're going to do one on this one next Wednesday at 10 a.m. So police dug up a body to investigate 2 Milwaukee area cold case homicides now believed to be related. So this woman here, she was found in a pool of blood at a factory she worked in Menominee Falls back in 1966. She had been stabbed over 100 times. The other girl is a 15-year-old that was found on the northwest side of Milwaukee in 71, and she was stabbed multiple times. And at that time, the officers believed that it was probably the same person that killed both of them. So they did, and with this one was also, again, I think they're gonna, I'm sure if they're giving a news conference, it's because they've solved it. But it says here, 2 Milwaukee area cold cases may be connected, and law enforcement may finally have answers to questions about the 66 murder of, this one was 19 years old, and the 15-year-old. The Menominee Falls Police Department will provide an update on the 2 cold case homicide investigations in a press conference on Wednesday. So they used also the FBI's CODIS index. It's CODIS. I guess this is an index of all convicted murderers, their DNA. This one came out 7 hours ago. Cold case solved. Inmate charged with the 1991 murder of Sabrina Underwood. Yes, again, I can't remember which ones, but there was 2 of them that came out today that people that were in jail admitted to these other murders after all these years. Yeah, and that's happening every day. So just think about that. Like, if you have trouble thinking that there's a creator and a God of everything, the stars wouldn't align this well unless the true Almighty was involved. I know there's people out there that don't believe in that. I would never understand that. Like, just driving today, I was driving out like in like a lot of woodsy area, and fall, it's beautiful colors, and it's like, how can people? All I could think is, like, how can you look at like all of nature and not just see God all over it? Because man couldn't have done any of that. Man didn't. If none of us were here, the trees, the plants, the grass, it would continue to grow because the Creator provides for it. So when you think the Creator won't provide for you, He will, but you have to learn to trust Him. Yeah. So this is all this stuff, all these stars aligning is because it's destined. It's meant for all of the truth to be exposed. And then this one's here in Illinois. This one isn't solved yet, but I'm sure it will be. It's like every time they go to exhume bodies, or they're solving all of them. So yeah, there'll be a ton more tomorrow. There'll be more put up tonight. It's like throughout the day. So this is in Illinois. Coroner exhumes grave in an attempt to solve a 1963 cold case. The McHenry County Coroner's Office got court approval this week to exhume the grave at Oston Cemetery west of McHenry. So yeah, it was updated today. So they got the approval. So I'm sure that will be successful. That's because every single one that they're going to solve ends up being solved. Yet for decades, none were being solved. So yeah, if you're losing hope, just realize that no, there's a lot of hope. It's just you have to seek it. There's no way this is happening every single day. The ones I've just showed are different than yesterday and different than the day before. You can, there's so many, and there were so many in 2020 and 2021. So for whatever reason, and also part of the reason police quit too, there's a ton of police officers that have quit, or detectives, because it was too hard on them. They said they had all these cold cases, and yet the bodies were just piling up. And of course, with BLM causing all of their nonsense the past few years, and the gangs running these major cities, they do have more deaths. Look at Chicago. The murder rate has increased. Do you see any Democrat calling for the removal of Pritzker or the mayor there? No. Instead, they just, oh yeah, they're doing a great job. Yeah, look. Now the police, hopefully, I would say God's on their side and everything's getting solved.